It's week 15 of the fantasy football season, fantasy playoffs for a lot of you, so which running backs should you ride with and who should be riding the bench in your lineup? We're about to find out. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre, he's Chris. You know what we're here to do, and that's to break down every matchup for week 15 and talk about running backs. You should know that bye weeks are over. There's nobody who's going to be resting this week. But you should also know that there's going to be 3 games on Saturday, so make sure you get those lineups in time set before Saturday. Now, before we get to the matchups, let's talk about the fact that there are some guys you still don't have to worry about. They are must-starts no matter what. Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Dalvin Cook, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, and Kenneth Walker if he plays. Speaking of Kenneth Walker, the Seahawks play on Thursday night, and it's against the 49ers. We'll see what happens. I mean, you still hope he goes, and I think you, even in this terrible matchup, you still have to start him. But what if he isn't ready, which is very possible? Are you rolling with Travis Homer?
No chance. I mean, the guy played 91% of the snaps in Week 14 and did nothing. Now it's San Francisco. No way am I playing Travis Homer.
No. I mean, it's almost hard enough to justify, really trusting Walker if he's healthy, but I still think you have to. I mean, I would definitely start him in every lineup I have him in, but yeah, no. This running game is non-existent without him. You can't play Homer, Tony Jones, anybody else, I don't care who it is. DJ Dallas, if he comes back, no way. One of those Saturday games is the Ravens taking on the Browns. I mean, we got to start with J.K. Dobbins. He's the guy there in Baltimore, and he wasn't just back. He was back with a vengeance, 120 yards and a touchdown. But can he do it again in what could be with a third-string quarterback behind center?
Yeah, that's going to be the question of the week, I think, for week 15 here is, do you trust J.K. Dobbins or not? I can't put him in the, good start, must start category. Just still so much risk even in a good matchup. But I think because of the matchup, you can start him.
I mean, you look at it one way. Huntley is looking doubtful to play. So again, it's Anthony Brown at quarterback. What are they going to do? Are they really looking to pass the ball? I mean, their passing game is bad enough this year. I think we see Dobbins just get force-fed the ball, whether it's in his best interest or not. I almost feel like if you have Dobbins, you probably just have to start him. I mean, you saw what he did last week. The matchup is even better on the ground. I think the volume is going to be even more. I'm not a Dobbins fan, but I feel like you have to start him. And then, despite kind of diminishing returns, you're still going with Nick Chubb. No questions asked. Can you say the same for Kareem Hunt?
No, definitely cannot start Kareem Hunt. This win or go home, no way am I trusting Kareem Hunt.
Nah, nothing's changed here. It's still a handcuff only. You can't start Hunt, of course. And the Dolphins, a rematch with the Bills. Both teams have struggled the last couple of weeks, but this time it's in Buffalo. What could be snowy conditions? How does it make you feel about Raheem Mostert? Jeff Wilson banged up with a hip, questionable for this coming week, so I think Mostert is by default the lead back. Is he startable?
Nah, not really. I mean, you'd have to be really desperate to put Raheem Mostert in your lineup, and this is not the time to be getting desperate. So I'm going to sit Raheem Mostert in this matchup.
Yeah, I don't care if he gets 100% of that team's, running back touches, and he didn't do a whole lot against the Chargers' run defense. He's not going to do a whole lot against the Bills. You can't trust Raheem Mostert, especially in the playoffs. Now on the Buffalo side, well, disappointing on both ends. Didn't know about the split. Devin Singletary, James Cook, didn't matter. They both tanked for your fantasy team last week. How do you feel about Singletary this time?
Not great. I mean, he was back to kind of like the guy again, but again, this is win or go home. I mean, I would hope at this point of the season you have a better option than Devin Singletary. No teams on bye this week. I'm also going to sit Devin Singletary.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's flex/stream if you need. Like, he's startable in the right situation, but again, hopefully you're not in this situation. You can't feel too confident in him. And then I think I feel slightly less confident in James Cook. Obviously not taking over that backfield, but also I just don't think the volume is there. I think I have to sit James Cook.
Yeah, you got to sit James Cook after what we saw last week. It looks like week 13 was just a fluke, not taking over this backfield and not in my fantasy lineups.
Falcons taking on the Saints, and this week we'll have a different quarterback in Atlanta, one who could run quite a bit, but let's see how that affects the running backs. We got Cordell Patterson. First of all, how do you treat CPAT in week 15?
Again, this is... Maybe I'm going to be too ruthless this week, but this is the fantasy playoffs. There's nobody on bye. I am not putting Cordell Patterson in my lineup. I mean, we haven't seen anything from him recently. He's splitting with Algier. Now we have a rookie quarterback. We don't know what this offense is going to look like. I'm sitting Cordell Patterson.
I think you have to. Again, you're just hoping for a touchdown. He'll get you 50, 60 yards. Maybe if he has a really good game, 70-something yards. You've got to shoot for more upside. Again, it's playoff time. It's a timeshare. Patterson maybe on the slightly higher end of it, but that's not enough for me. So I'm going to sit him unless you really are thin at running back. And then Tyler Algier, any more optimistic about him?
No, you got to be less optimistic about Algier. It's not a great matchup anyway, so definitely sitting Tyler Algier.
Yeah, sitting Algier for sure. What worries me is that Ritter, I know Mariota is athletic. He's a quarterback who can be a dual threat and he'll run, but Ritter's a little bit younger, a little bit faster these days. I think he might run more often. This is going to hurt the running backs. Yeah, I don't think you can start Algier. And then we got Alvin Kamara. I mean, disappointing week after week. This is where the schedule softens. Is it enough for you to say you've got to trust him in the playoffs?
Yeah, I'm not going to say you have to trust him. Like, he's not a guy. I know you look at the name, you see Alvin Kamara, you think I have to start him. I'm not going to go that far, but I'm going to say, he's at least startable this week. So, if you need him, whether it's a flex, whether it's a low-end RB2, it's a good matchup. He's startable.
Well, I will say, based on all the names we've said so far, not that we've gotten to any of the most impressive running backs, but I would take him based on what we know is his ceiling as a pass catcher, as a guy who can score touchdowns. I would rather roll with him, not because of the name value, but just because we know what he's capable of. And it's a pretty good matchup. So I think he's a solid RB2, not an absolute must start, but a solid start this week. Steelers going to take on the suddenly formidable Panthers. How do you feel about Najee Harris in this matchup?
Kind of the same way I always feel about Najee Harris. He's definitely, startable. It's not a terrible matchup. He can score. He gets the volume. So, not a must start, but, startable.
Yeah, I think maybe the lower end of the RB2 range. For me, he's been pretty good the last few weeks. I also worry, though, Mitch Trubisky could be back at quarterback, and you saw what that meant last week. It means giving the ball back to the other team quite a bit. So you can't love Najee this week, but you can't hate him either. And then Dante Foreman, I guess I kind of feel the same way. He's kind of like a poor man's Najee. The volume is there, but I don't know. Do you feel like there's more upside missing here?
Yeah, last week, a smash spot. Got the volume, just did nothing with it. Just very touchdown dependent. So, but again, I mean, with the kind of volume he's getting, it's hard to say, to sit him. But more like a flex play, desperation flex kind of play.
Yeah, I'll put him just a tick below Najee. I think he's startable, more of a high-end RB3. Without a touchdown, you might be left kind of wanting more. It's possible. Look, Panthers have been playing good. They're at home. Steelers aren't a dominant defense, so I think he is somebody you could start if you need him. And then Chuba Hubbard, well, he suddenly made an appearance. This might worry you if you have Foreman. Hubbard was the better of the backs last week. Does this make him startable?
Yeah, I actually like him a little bit more than Foreman. He looked good. He had really good burst. And we know he's going to catch more passes. That's the thing. So these guys are really close for me. It should be another game where the Panthers can run it to their heart's content because the Steelers aren't going to, put them in negative game script more than likely. So, again, another guy, flex him if you need him kind of guy.
You also have to figure not only that this game would probably be pretty low scoring, but look, DJ Moore, we don't know what the deal is with him. They're probably just going to go through the running backs like they did last week. We could see a lot of work for both these guys again. But Hubbard still a little bit lower end for me, just a flex, and not my favorite flex either. Eagles taking on the Bears. Miles Sanders has been on fire. Do you think he keeps it up? Is he going to find the end zone again?
I mean, probably. It's the Bears. It's a great matchup. You have to start Miles Sanders this week.
Yeah, I mean, Eagles are rolling. Sanders keeps scoring, doing exactly what nobody expected him to do this year, is be one of the top leaders in rushing touchdowns. Yeah, it's the Bears. There's no reason not to start Sanders. On the flip side, you got David Montgomery coming off a bye. How do you feel about him against this Eagles run defense?
Yeah, the Eagles run defense getting better. They're healthy again. But David Montgomery, we know he's going to get so much work. He's going to catch enough passes. Yeah, don't feel great about him this week, but I still think you got to start David Montgomery.
More of a floor play. I can't envision a huge Monty game here against the Eagles, but he does catch passes. The competition still isn't there as long as Herbert is out. He could always score. I think he's a pretty decent RB2. Chiefs going to take on the Texans in what you would think is a colossal mismatch until you realize last week that the Texans almost beat the Cowboys and the Chiefs somehow almost lost to the Broncos. So, with that said, how do you feel about Isaiah Pacheco?
I feel pretty good about him this week. It's the Texans. I mean, we thought after the last, weeks 12 and 13, maybe they were getting better on, the run defense, and then the Cowboys, Zeke and Tony Pollard just absolutely shredded them. So I feel like Pacheco can have a nice game this week. I think if you got Pacheco, he's a good start this week.
I mean, I don't want to go so far as to say he's an absolute must start, but you've got to love Pacheco because kind of similar, albeit a little bit smaller than Tony Pollard, but similar style of runner, and he's got less competition for touches. McKinnon, I know, was great last week, but that's as a pass catcher, not a rusher, so you got to feel great if you have Isaiah Pacheco this week. And then let's talk about that guy, McKinnon. I mean, monster game. And now he gets the Texans. Is it almost too good to be true?
I mean, maybe, but look, this is what he can do. This is what he's done his whole career back in Minnesota, back in San Francisco, last year with the Chiefs, right now with the Chiefs. I think he has enough upside that, I don't feel as good about him as Pacheco, of course, because we know he's not going to get the volume, but he catches passes and he just has so much upside. I think another guy, like, if you need him as a kind of like a flex start, he makes a good one because it's Houston and he's got the upside.
And as much as you don't want to go chasing, performance from a week ago, who's going to have as much potential as he does? Would you rather have McKinnon take a shot on him doing something, or a guy like James Cook, or a guy like Chuba Hubbard? Give me McKinnon. I think he's a very solid flex play. And then Dameon Pierce, just when it looked like he was kind of coming back to life, but he left late with an ankle sprain, going to be questionable most likely heading into this week. If Pierce plays, how do you treat him?
I'm not playing Pierce. It went as good as it could possibly go last week. Somehow they were winning. He got 22 carries. He scored a touchdown. And you got nothing from him. Like, no upside here with Dameon Pierce. I'm sitting him.
I do think the risk outweighs the potential reward, because really, what is the potential reward? Do you really see a game in the cards for him better than last week? And again, last week he could get that touchdown because the Texans were gifted the ball inside the red zone and they took it in. Yeah, I hate to say it, but even if he's playing and healthy, I'm not starting Dameon Pierce. Cowboys taking on the Jaguars. Barely squeaked out a win, but both their running backs remain hot. Tony Pollard also keeps scoring touchdowns. Against the Jags, is he a must start?
Yeah, against Jacksonville. Look, Derrick Henry turned back the clock like 3 years against this Jags team, ripping off huge runs. This run defense is terrible. You have to start Tony Pollard.
Yeah, I've got Pollard in a couple of my teams, and I don't even think about it anymore. He's just set in my lineup. He's starting, no questions asked. Do you say the same for Zeke?
I think you have to. He's been looking good down the stretch here, scoring touchdowns, and it's a great matchup. I think you've got to start Zeke as well.
Yeah, I think if the matchup is good enough, which it still is, I think you start Zeke too. And you might notice that since the bye week, he's been a lot more efficient. I think the week off did him some good. This whole offense is on fire. Keep rolling with Zeke too. Then we have the opposite situation. Probably one of the more disappointing players, not just lately, but now, if you look at the whole season, Travis Etienne. almost bordering on bust territory, but can you start him against the Cowboys?
I can't. I can't do it. I just can't. Like, what? Like, this is your, again, win or go home. Like, you're going to put him in your lineup and hope this week is somehow different. Not catching any passes, not even getting targets. Needs a touchdown, and even then, what are you going to get from him if he scores? I cannot start Travis Etienne this week.
What worries me is that really the last, I think, 3 games, even when they really haven't had to pass the ball a lot, the Jaguars are just passing nonstop. Etienne's just not getting the ball enough, and it's not even about game script. So if you assume that the Cowboys are at least ahead by a little bit, I don't think the Jags are going to sit back and try to run the ball 20-plus times. Etienne's not getting the volume, hasn't been hyper efficient. He's not scoring touchdowns. I don't think you can start him. Lions going to take on the Jets. Let's start with DeAndre Swift. I know it was a letdown last week. What do you expect this week?
Who knows? I mean, really, honestly, who knows? It looked like in week 13, okay, he's back, and then week 14, he's not back again, and he's playing less snaps than Jamal, and Justin Jackson's involved again. I guess you kind of have to still start him unless you have really good options, because he has that upside that can win your week. So, yeah, I'm not going to say like a must start, but I think if you have him, you kind of have to roll with him and hope for the best.
Yeah, it's so hard to put him on your bench. It's not the greatest spot. And again, a little worried when you start to see guys like Justin Jackson carrying the ball earlier in the game and you see his usage go down just when it had gone up. I'm going to look really hard at the practice report this whole week and see, like last week, remember, he started off limited. If he's all good to go, maybe the week of not really carrying the ball last game did him some good. I still think you pretty much have to start him. And then Jamal Williams, ton of carries, not a ton of yardage. How do you treat him?
Yeah, I said not to start him last week. I'm not starting him this week. This is a tougher matchup. He's like Dameon Pierce, right? I mean, he really is. Like, he gets all this volume but does nothing with it. And then even when he scores a touchdown, you get nothing from him. Not starting him this week.
That's the thing, is he's always good potentially for a touchdown, but not much else. He doesn't catch passes. He's not going for 100 yards, so he is always a fringe flex start. You could, but you can't feel great about him this week. Now, do you feel good about Zonovan Knight, who, well, maybe we shouldn't be surprised that he's still retained that lead role, got a lot of carries, has looked really efficient. He keeps doing the same thing. Is Zonovan Knight now a guy that's firmly on the RB2 radar?
Yeah, I think RB2 sounds about right. I will say there's this interesting trend the last 5 or 6 weeks where Detroit's run defense has actually gotten good, but, Knight looks good. He's the lead back there. Not like a must start, but I think he's a good start this week.
I mean, I'll say I feel better about Knight than Jamal Williams. I think he's being used near the goal line. That's a good sign. He's gained the majority of the carries. You should feel pretty solid about him. And Michael Carter, no, I don't think you can roll with him.
No, not putting Michael Carter in my lineup this week. No chance.
Cardinals taking on the Broncos. It's still the James Conner show. Still not a good matchup once again on the road against Denver. Where does he fall for you?
I mean, he gets so much volume, and he does catch some passes, and he can always score. I like him better than Jamal Williams or Travis Etienne or somebody like that, but I don't love him this week. But I think, if you need him, you can start him.
Yeah, agree. He's kind of always lingering there, lurking around the low-end RB2 range. Not the best spot, but he's getting the volume. He is startable if he's your best option there at the RB2. And then Latavius Murray. I mean, you'd really have to try to find a way to convince me to start Latavius Murray.
Yeah, I keep saying it, but man, this is your season on the line. You really want to be looking at Latavius Murray in your lineup? No chance. Not starting him.
Patriots taking on the Raiders. Well, this backfield for New England now very much in question. Saw Ramondre Stevenson going off with an injury on Monday night. If Ramondre is good to go, are you rolling with him, no questions asked?
I think you kind of have to, unless he's, not practicing all week and is a game time decision, then maybe it's too risky. But as long as he's practicing and he seems okay, I think you have to roll with him.
Yeah, this matchup is so good. You know he still brings that floor as a pass catcher, and Patriots are not a team usually to throw guys out there if they're limited or injured in any way. So you think if he's playing, he's good to go. I feel like you definitely have to start him if he's playing. Now, if Ramondre's out, or you know what, even if he does play, let's assume Damien Harris plays. He's a guy who missed last week, going to be limited possibly, but what do you do with him with or without Ramondre?
Well, I think if Ramondre is out and Damien Harris is good to go, you pretty much, I'm not going to say a must start because he's not going to catch a ton of passes, but this is such a good matchup. I'll say he's a good start.
Yeah, I would think if there's no Ramondre, but yes to Damien Harris, he's getting 15 plus carries. You know he can score. A solid start. Just he's limited in PPR leagues, as you said. All right, Cincinnati is rolling, and now they roll into Tampa Bay to take on the Bucs, who are struggling. Joe Mixon is not a no doubt must start anymore. Saw some of his work kind of get cut into by Samaje Perine, but how do you feel about Mixon? Is he pretty much a must start?
Yeah, I feel like if you've got Mixon, you're probably starting him. Definitely a little concerning last week with Perine's role. Mixon looked good though. I mean, it was the Browns, but he looked good. So I think if you got Mixon, you're starting him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not a great matchup for running backs either, but how many guys can you put ahead of Mixon? How many running backs do you have on your roster that you're going to start over him? I think for the most part, you got to go with him. And Samaje Perine, I know he's been more involved, but I think if Mixon plays, you can't put him in a starting lineup.
No, I mean, he was more involved last week. He scored a touchdown, and he still got you basically nothing. He can't start Perine.
All right, what about Rachaad White? Again, Tampa struggling. He fumbled again, which could be concerning. How do you view him in Week 15?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about the fumble. He, I don't know if it was a foot or what, but he dominated, the touches at least on the ground, pretty even through the air. But he just not a lot of upside in this offense, for anybody really. So basically like a flex him if you need him guy at best.
Yeah, not a great matchup for running backs. Not a great offense at this point, and Lenny's still there, and he's catching some passes too. White will give you a floor, but I just don't see much of a ceiling this week. So, like you said, flex at best. And then Lenny, I kind of feel the same exact way. Like he gets you points. You might get about 10 or 11 in PPR, and that's pretty much all you're going to get.
Yeah, same thing. A flex if you need him, but that's his best case.
Rematch of the Giants taking on the Commanders. Well, we're hoping for better things from Saquon Barkley, that's for sure, but you still should not worry about him. But what about Brian Robinson, who, before the bye, had a really nice game against this Giants squad? Does he do it again?
I don't see why not. This Giants run defense is really bad. Not a guy I think you have to start, but, one of the better starts this week.
I think a really solid choice. I mean, I think he creeps up almost to the RB2 range. You just saw the Giants got all run over by Miles Sanders, and they have been worse and worse by the week. So I think Robinson is a solid start. What about Antonio Gibson, though?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of was taking a backseat to Brian Robinson before the bye. You can't bank on that changing. Too risky, I think, this week. I'm going to sit him.
Yeah, again, if this were just any other week, maybe with some teams on bye and you need a guy, maybe, but you need that upside. He doesn't have it, so I'll just say sit Antonio Gibson. And then last game of the week, Rams at the Packers. Doesn't look like this is going to be a rematch of the NFC Championship game or anything like that. So let's talk about Cam Akers. How do you feel about Akers against this pretty suspect Packers run defense?
Yeah, it's a great matchup, but you can't feel great about him. I mean, had a great matchup last week too, and really saved his day with a touchdown. And by saving his day, I mean didn't completely bust. So I kind of view him like Jamal Williams and these guys that need a touchdown to do anything, to give you anything really. So doesn't catch passes. I'm sitting him.
All right, well, call me a truther if you want, but I feel like he's at least back to the degree that he can be productive. It's a great spot for him. I definitely think he's startable. Definitely not a guy you want to force into your lineup. But look, there are many other guys we've talked about that don't have nearly as much potential. I kind of like Akers this week, so I'll say he's startable. And then Aaron Jones got the week off. Do you think that he'll be fresh and ready to bounce back from a down week 13?
He should. I mean, the Rams are if nothing else, the Rams are still a very good run defense. But I think if you have Aaron Jones, you kind of have to start him.
Yeah, this is a guy so hard to bench. Again, I feel like they're going to give him the ball enough that you want him in your lineup for that upside. You go with Aaron Jones. You don't question it. What about A.J. Dillon? He's been coming on lately, the last couple of weeks. Do you feel good about him?
No, can't feel good about A.J. Dillon because, again, like I said, the Rams, they're still a really good run defense, and he's not really doing much else. Like he is catching some passes, he's getting the volume, but it's not like he's looked fantastic, breaking off big runs. It just feels too risky this week. I'm going to sit him.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel better about him than I did earlier in the season, but I don't feel great about this matchup. And I know a lot of the work he got was because Jones was kind of banged up in their last game. You should probably go elsewhere than A.J. Dillon. All right, now you know which running backs you should be starting or sitting for Week 15. What about wide receiver, quarterback, tight end, and all the other advice you need to win? Well, we have it right here. Check our playlist for all the fantasy advice that you need for the fantasy playoffs.